Okay.
Hello, everybody. I'm here with Kurt Wiscombe. He, a few months ago, or maybe less, he poked a question at me. We should do a video. So here we are today. We're doing this video. We're going to talk about a few things that Kurt's up to currently, and I have a few questions about his style and his process of how he creates his art. I bet we're going to get into some really fascinating conversation, but thanks for coming on here today, Kurt. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. I always think that the person wears the tattoo, not the other way around. The tattoo doesn't wear the person, right? Like the tattoo makes the person more interesting.
Yeah.
It's not like the tattoo is the only interesting thing about the person, like the person, even if it's, and it doesn't have to be a big tattoo. It doesn't even have to be a good tattoo, right? Like somebody has like a homemade tattoo or something, you're wondering like, well, I wonder how they ended up with that, right? Like, what's the story there? Maybe they got it when they were kids screwing around. Who knows, right?
And that's something I've been deeply fascinated with in my work tattooing is what's the story? Like, what's this mean? How's this, so when I'm interpreting that story, it's like, I'm going to make this part of you, I'm not just going to stick it on and be my art. It's part of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And like, even to the point, sometimes like when I'm, let's say designing, let's say I'm doing a sleeve or a half sleeve or something. And sometimes, I don't know, an example, let's say they're getting a skull right here or Oni or something, right? And I got a couple sizes. I photocopy a bunch of different sizes and try them on. Oh, this one looks like it fits. This one's good. This one fits the arm perfectly. And you're like, yes, it looks perfect. But then I step back and look at their whole body and I think, well, the skull on your arm is bigger than your head, right? I'm like, it fits your arm perfectly, but it looks overkill. It looks a bit crazy. So it's like, well, let's make the skull a little smaller then, right? Even if it's just a little bit smaller, sometimes that's all it takes to not overpower their head, right? Because people aren't just going to look at their arm and be like, oh, I'm looking at your arm. No, I'm looking at your head. No, I'm looking at whatever. It's like, no, people are looking at you, the person. And it's like the tattoo should be a part of your picture, not just a piece of art that you're carrying around on your arm. It is your arm.
Well, and this is sort of a segue into the first question I want to ask you.
Sure, yeah.
Is like, as long as I've been watching your work, you have this consistent style, but there's sort of a dichotomy where I see illustrative components to it, and that lends to what we were just talking about with Greg Irons. But then there's this European kind of painterly feel to it. But your work just has this really powerful statement. And, I wanted to know what drove you to create your style. And you speaking about placement on the body is certainly part of that. But so what are your influence and what drove you to create the way you do?
Well, I mean, I guess what led me to start tattooing, what like a lot of the work I'm working on nowadays is, my interest in Japanese tattooing. I remember years and years ago, like even before you and I talked a long time ago, really discovering Japanese tattoo art. And I remember seeing in National Geographic years ago, I remember seeing like a tattooer tattooing a guy like by hand with a full bodysuit and thinking how cool that was, and I remember this movie when I was a kid, Showdown in Little Tokyo. You remember that movie?
Okay. Yeah.
And the Yakuza guy, he takes off his shirt, and when he exposed his tattoo, that was, you knew you were done after that in the movie, right? And I just thought that was so crazy, and I was like, and I was mesmerized by the style of Japanese tattooing, and then also even the movie Tattoo. You remember the old movie Tattoo with Bruce Dern and Maud Adams? And the art in there, that was actually created by was it Cliff Raven or somebody did some of the art? Cliff
Something
Raven.
Like that.
I forget. There was another artist, but like just that style. I thought it was so beautiful, and just like, to me, that kind of art looked like it was made for tattooing. I like it. It just, I don't know. It just, I was really intrigued by it, I guess. And so I started trying to learn more about it. And it's, as a Canadian, I mean, I'm not Japanese, so it's not like a traditional route. I just kind of looked at the art, and I always loved it. When I first started tattooing, I remember coming across some drawings by Kazuo Guri, and I think Crazy Ace showed me them, actually, and he
Okay.
actually tattooed a Kazuo Guri peony on my shoulder.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and just I just fell in love with that kind of art, and just trying, as a sort of a naive kid, I guess, I was like, I'm going to try drawing some of this stuff. I'll try learning how to do these flowers. I'll try learning how to do this. And then I realized that it was like going to become a lifelong pursuit. It's not so easy as just, oh, I'll just try to draw Japanese stuff. It's like, no. There's so much to learn there, right?
Yeah.
And as far as inspiration, like again, like the Uzuma Konami book I showed you, like that sort of outside of the traditions of tattooing approach, or at least that's how it looks to me. I find that so inspirational, because it's kind of because that's kind of my approach. Like, I'm not coming at it from an inside Japanese kind of tradition. I'm a Westerner looking in on that style and interpreting it in my way, and just in the way that I think looks right to me, I guess. I never I'm not aware of of doing a certain style. Like, I just kind of, if it feels right, it looks right to me, that's how I do it.
That's great.
You mentioned like the European painterly thing. I am actually very inspired by European paintings, but not so much from that sort of Japanese point of view. Like, I love Art Nouveau. I love the old masters. I really love Rembrandt and the Dutch masters. But European tattooing, obviously, like Philip and Luke and Mick and all these guys that are doing all that Japanese stuff, that's absolutely, definitely an influence and an inspiration for me as well. So I don't know if you're talking about European tattooing style or European painting style. I'm not sure.
The European influence in general, because they were doing like a more painterly, loose style of tattooing before it ever came over here, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like, you mean like like Tintin and Stefan Schoedzig and people like that doing that sort of painterly stuff back in the early 90s, or Bernie Luther, or people like that, right? Yeah. Those definitely inspiration to me. I remember I remember the first time I ever went to a tattoo convention ever was the first Montreal tattoo convention, and I went with this guy John Cook, and John Cook was an artist from northern Saskatchewan, and he was helping me learn things. It was like I was already tattooing when I met him, but then he came along and kind of showed me how to tattoo better, like properly, maybe,
Yeah.
And so John was kind of, I guess you could say, he kind of took me under his wing a little bit. And so him and I went to Montreal, and I remember asking him, like, who should I be watching, right? Like, I wasn't tattooing there. I was just there as a guest, right? And I was like, who should I be watching? Like, who should I be learning from? And he said, well, you should watch Bernie Luther. Like, Bernie Luther is such a good artist. He's phenomenal, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch Bernie Luther, right? And so I remember watching him do this tattoo. And back then, like, you didn't really ask tattoo artists questions, right? Like, this was 93, and like, I mean, tattooing was becoming a lot more open, but it still wasn't completely open as it is a little bit more now, right? And I just shut my mouth and stood there watching them tattoo, and after about maybe 5 hours of standing there, and my feet were killing me from watching them, and finally Bernie looks up at me and he goes, oh, you're still here, huh? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, are you a tattoo artist? And I said, well, yeah. I've been just doing it a few years. I'm just, I'm just watching, trying to learn something. Right. And he's like, okay, well, so he's like, well, come closer then. You might as well come have a look. And he started explaining to me what he was doing. And he's like telling me, oh, I color like this. And I showing me how he built up lines and all this sort of thing. And yeah. And just from that one moment of watching him tattoo, I picked up so many tips for how to color properly. I was like, oh, he colors like that. Oh, he does this. Oh, neat. Oh, I'm going to go home and try all that. And I did. And I mean, to this day, I still kind of color like that.
Well, it must have been printed something there, because like I say, I could see that in your work. Like it's bold, illustrative, but it's such a visually powerful tattoos that you put on, and not overstated or understated. So well, I was just curious, like, who were the people that, and I remember you telling me about Bernie Luther before.
Yeah, definitely that early on. And of course then, and there was so many fabulous artists then that I watched, like Tintin and Mike Austin. There was like Aaron Kane, Paul Booth, all these amazing artists were there at that show. And yeah, it just kind of that was such an amazing time, like that, going to those first Montreal shows, because it was like, oh my God, there's that guy, there's that guy, there's that girl, there's that guy, there's that girl, whoever, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm gonna go watch that person for a little while. I'm gonna watch that. It was like being in a candy store. It's like, I'll go watch them. I'll go watch that guy. And I went home. My head must have been like spilling out. Like all the ideas must have been falling out of my ears, because there was so many of them in there. And I went home and immediately tried everything. And some of it worked and some of it didn't. And the stuff that didn't work for me, I worked at and eventually figured out how to make it work, or tried anyway. But also, one thing that's kind of that I'm going through nowadays is, I've been tattooing now about 35 years. And over the years, you learn, like you're talking about boldness and sort of maybe simplicity of design or whatever. You learn over the years what holds up and what doesn't hold up. And I've seen some tattoos that I did that were 20 years ago or more that held up great and bright and really bold. And yeah. And then I've seen some that didn't hold up quite as well. They've aged a little bit. They're a little faded. Maybe some of the thick lines that we did back then are a little thicker now. I mean, the lines get thicker. That's the fact of life with tattoos, right? So, and then there's also environmental factors. Some people tan them more than others. Some people are like, they never go in the sun, so their tattoos look bright 20 years later, and there's those. But I try to I take mental note of all that kind of stuff constantly, even to this day. And I'll see an old tattoo and be like, see how that aged. Okay, well, that's good. I'll do more like that, right? Or maybe, that actually didn't age as the way I wanted it to. So, okay, I'm going to lay off on that kind of stuff, I think a good example would be like if a really hairy person, right? Like some people come in to get their chest done, and maybe guys got really hairy chest and they want like a portrait or something really detailed on the chest. And it's like, well, sure, when we shave it and do it, it's going to look great, right? Is he going to shave his chest for the rest of his life?
Yeah,
probably not, right? So maybe that's not the best spot for that, right? If somebody's super hairy, because it's not going to show. So,
yeah.
And little things like that. So I guess over the years, seeing those kind of things, that's what's helped me to kind of end up where I'm at now. And now I really keep that in mind quite a lot. And I always have as I went. I've always learned as I go. And you never stop learning, right? So I'm still learning, and with every tattoo, I'm like trying to make a tattoo that's going to last as long as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's from the simplistic point of view. That's a technical thing, right?
That's right, and that shows your maturity in your experience in the craft, where you're drawing from your past, and so that's such an important part. And in our personal history is to to carry something forward from what we've done in the past. Like let our past work inform our style today.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you see something that if you see something that could be better, and then you just keep doing it that same way, well, then what's the point of that? It's like you're just repeating yourself. And I kind of think you have to grow in anything. I guess you don't have to grow, but for me, growing is more interesting, right?
Yeah.
It's more fun, and I like to push my art and myself, and I'm never satisfied to just coast.
Mm-hmm. A friend of mine, he's a pretty amazing drummer, and he said to me one time, practice makes permanent, not always perfect. And if you're just doing the same stuff,
Sure.
you're not kind of looking outside the box or letting your past mistakes, evolve you, then you're just recycling the same stuff, right?
I guess in that regard, it becomes like muscle memory, right? Drumming is a good example, because with drumming, or any musical instrument, right, there's an element of muscle memory.
Mm-hmm.
I played musical instruments growing up, and I know that you get to a point where it's almost like the instrument is playing itself, right? Like it's just a muscle memory. But when you really want to push it, that's when your brain takes over, and that's way harder. I've always had this, as I've learned over the years, like now in recent times, I've learned they call it anxiety. But I guess as a younger person, I used to get this feeling in my stomach of butterflies, and I guess that's anxiety, right? But I didn't know that then. And I used to always seek that feeling. I always thought that if I was doing something, whether it be art, tattooing, painting, music, anything in life, I always thought if I have that feeling, to me, that meant I was doing something interesting.
Yeah.
And I always thought like it was me pushing myself. Like I remember the first time doing art fusion. You remember all the art fusion stuff that went on for a long time, right? And I remember Philip telling me we were going to this convention in Worcester, Massachusetts, that Paul Booth put on this convention, and he's like, we're going to do this art fusion thing there, and you ought to get involved in it. It's really fun. It's really cool. It'd be really good for you. It's a way to push yourself, right? And so, okay, I will then, right? So we go there, and I remember there was they were going to do it like up on stage, and Paul Booth had this big double hotel room, and he's like, we're going to set up a practice run just in the hotel. So he put a bunch of these papers on the wall and with pastels, and he had 7 different ones. And I asked him, I was like, do you mind if I get in on this? Like, I'd really love to be a part of this, right? And even just saying that, I was like nervous. I'm like, and
sure, yeah.
All these artists who I admired and some I'd never met, like Guy Aitchison and whoever, I can't remember exactly who was all there. I know the Kern brothers. I know Philip was there, and all kinds of people. Anyway, all kinds of amazing artists were there, just in this hotel room, and there was 7 of them. So I figured, well, he's going to pick 7 guys. I don't expect to be one of them, right? But I'll help him set up, and I'm just kind of taping the stuff up. And then we go. He goes to do it, and there's one left over. And Paul looks at me, and he's like, "Well, you wanted to do it." He's like, "Get in there, then." And I was like, "Okay." and I'm next to Guy Aitchison, and I'm like, "Oh shit, I want to go behind Guy Aitchison because I don't want him to see the crappy drawing I'm gonna make, right? And laugh at me and be like, "That guy sucks," So I go, and he says, "Okay, go." And we had to switch I think it was every 3 minutes or 2 minutes or something. And I did just a crappy little drawing. My hands were shaking. I don't even know what it was. It was just something, right? A sketch. Yeah. And then I go switch, and I go to the next one was the drawing Guy had made. And it was crappy too. It wasn't very good. It just looked like a scribble or something. And I was like, oh yeah, it kind of looked like it was going somewhere, but then I just built on it. I was like, well, maybe he's going to do this. So I built on that and kind of do that. And then as we went, everybody's was like that. And I realized it was I guess what I took out of that particular experience was how we all leaned on each other, and that everybody started out with just some rough sketch. Yeah, and nobody started with a masterpiece, you know. And we all built on it. We all anticipated each other, and then as the thing went, more people joined in. I think there was like 20 people by the end of it, all chiming in. And one moment that really stood out was this guy. His name was Pogo, I think. There was a guy, and I had a little box of pastels. There was all these different colors, right? And he was looking for one in the box, and I had this one in my hand, and I don't know why he didn't say anything. He didn't even look at me. I could see him rummaging through the box I was holding, and I knew he was looking for the one I was holding so he could do this highlight with it. And I just did the highlight. And I was like, "Oh, you were going to do that, weren't you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I was looking for that color so I could do that." And I was like, "Yeah, I figured." So I just did it for him. You know, he's like, "How did you know that?" And I was like, "I don't know. We just got into each other's heads, you know." And that was so cool. And in the end, I thought they turned out pretty cool, and definitely something none of us would have created on our own. It was definitely its own thing, right? So
that's right.
Yeah.
I imagine there would be this symbiotic experience, connectedness between everybody in the canvas. That would be pretty cool. I've never done anything like that myself, but
oh yeah, you should try that.
Yeah.
Well, next time you're out this way, maybe we'll collaborate on a drawing or something.
You do about 4 rounds on it, then I'll touch up the last bit.
No way. If you're in it all the way. From
That's
the beginning to the end.
So
it's a lot of fun, and I mean it's like at first I felt, I guess that was what led to that example, is like at first I felt so nervous about it and so like kind of uptight about it, right? And then I realized partway through that there's nothing to be uptight about. We're all in the same boat, you know, us tattoo guys. We all kind of think our own way, but all kind of think the same way at the same time, and you know, we leaned on each other, and it was good. It was like almost like a bonding experience.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't listened to that butterfly in my stomach, I may not have done it. Because it was telling me, don't do it. It was telling me, you're going to look like an idiot in front of these amazing artists. And I was like, yeah. Screw it.
Well, I've always felt like my vulnerabilities are my greatest strengths I've yet to discover. And I love being vulnerable because it's a catalyst for growth. That's the way I see vulnerability. Butterflies, same thing, right?
Yeah. So, I guess if you're feeling vulnerable, it's like you're kind of putting yourself out there, going out on a limb or something. And no, as artists, I think about the artists I like, whether it be musicians or painters or whoever, I guess it's the artists that have something to say. You know, the artists that kind of take chances, that's the ones that are really interesting. And the ones that just play it safe, I guess they're okay too, but I don't find it as interesting necessarily for myself.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like even this project that I'm doing with the books documenting the Canadian tattoo scene. Like when I first started that, holy crap, I didn't think anyone would give me the time of day, and it turns out that just persistence and you know, I had to hump a few legs along the way, and well, no, I was really scared to do it.
Yeah,
getting in front of all my idols, like, it was tough.
That's going to be an amazing thing, you know, and maybe you going out on a limb and taking a chance by asking people to be a part of it, maybe people could see that you were sincere and that you really wanted to tell this story. And again, it's like in the tattoo community, we lean on each other. I mean, I know for me, when you asked me, it was like back when we first did an interview, you know, I thought, well, he wants to tell the story. Okay, well then I'm going to back him up. I believe in it too. Yeah, sure. Why not? Tell the story. I mean, that's really cool. And here's somebody willing to do it. So, you know.
Yeah, I hit a milestone. I I broke 100,000 words in the book.
Oh, wow.
So and I'm probably only a quarter of the way through writing, but it's certainly well on its way.
How thick is the book going to be like?
Well, it's going to be 3 books. It's going to,
Oh, wow.
book 1 is 1900 to 1970s. Book 2 is 80s to 2000, because there's so many people came into the industry at that time, right? And
Absolutely.
then book 3 is 2000 on.
Wow.
So, and they'll all launch simultaneously.
It's an astronomical feat, I'm sure. I don't have it in me to go across the country and do that. I would love to, but it's a lot of work. I don't have to tell you.
Well, I find people deeply fascinating, and I really enjoy, and I don't care if the person's like the top level artist or if they're doing scratching tattoos. Like, I think they're all spokes in the wheel, right? It's not a book about who's the best. It's a book about the Canadian electric tattoo scene, and so I find it deeply fascinating to get into people's story and hear what brought them to current day. It's been such an honor and pleasure to interview people, and not just the big names. The big names were great, but every name, they're all big to me.
Well, sure. Every human, every person has a story, right? Whatever that story is. Like, I really believe that really no one is really inherently more important than another person. Everybody just has a different path. Maybe somebody who's been tattooing a long time and has accomplished a lot, maybe they just chose that path and they did a lot with it, and maybe some other person, they just chose a different path and maybe they're doing their own thing. Maybe some people have yet to reveal or achieve what they're going to be, what their thing is going to be, and I would think it would be interesting to talk to somebody that's even just on that journey. I'm sure all tattooers these days, we get tons of emails and calls from people that want to learn tattooing, and I'm always interested to talk to these people, and I invite a lot of young people in here to show me their drawings and their paintings. And even I'm not taking an apprentice. I have an apprentice now, but I'm not going to take on 5 apprentices, right? I mean, but it doesn't matter. I still have the time of day for them, like these people can come by and I'll tell them, oh, this is what I think of your this, and this is what maybe you could improve upon or whatever. And I don't know if it's going anywhere, but why not? Why not help, right? Who knows? Maybe they become the next great tattoo artist, and some of them end up, getting an apprenticeship or whatever, whether it be somewhere else or what.
And then you become part of their story, and we just don't know how they're going to take what you say to them and grind on that for years. Like, it could propel them in a really positive way. So good on you for giving people a minute. That's really awesome.
Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't, but all you can do is say what you think and hope they'll do something with it. I say to almost all of them, I have this thing I say, that if it's in your blood, you'll find a way. Tattooing is in your blood, and if it's there, you'll find a way, right? Like,
that's great.
I started out as a self-taught artist. I didn't have an apprenticeship. I found a way. I ended up finding other artists like that guy John and other artists. Watching Bernie Luther for how many hours, and amongst many other tattooers, like, I found a way in that regard. Like, I don't consider myself to be self-taught because I learned so much from all these other artists that I either worked with or followed or just watched over the years.
Yeah. You
find your way in tattooing.
Yeah, it's like there's ones that have the tattooer's heart, and they have this extra appreciation and love for what it is we're doing, and they respect how special tattooing is. I know I certainly do. It's such an important aspect of my world.
Yeah. Well, it becomes your world, right? It becomes you, right?
Yeah. I've been noticing on Instagram that you're doing all these back piece drawings. What sort of sparked that up for you, Kurt?
Well, that started actually, that was a few months ago. And at the time I had four artists here working with me at the shop. And I thought of it as a challenge, actually. It was really just, I wanted those guys to all draw a bunch of back pieces and just for fun. I just thought it'd be cool. And it's a cool way to come up with some concepts outside of what people are asking for, like, and show a little more like, oh, maybe this is an idea, something I might want to do, right? So put it out there. You know, if nobody wants it, nobody wants it. If somebody wants it, hey, great, right? So
Yeah.
I kind of put it out there as like a shop challenge to do 100 backs, and there was five of us, including me. So I figured that's 20 each, right? That's not too bad. Anyway, I just kind of got carried away with it. I still haven't gotten 20 done, but I got a lot of them done.
Sure, yeah.
And
now,
I'm
what
still
about the other crew?
I guess, and now there's only three of us here. So I guess now, well, what's 100 divided by three? I don't know. It's like 30.
Like 33?
33. So we each got to do 33.33 something. I guess I'll be doing 34.
I'll do one and submit it to you. How's that?
Sure, that'll be the extra one. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess we'll do more. But actually in doing it, I really it did unlock something, I think, because it was almost like an excuse to just draw at home, and like I told you, I haven't been painting much, and I haven't really been doing a lot of drawing outside of the shop, like for tattooing. And I've been putting 100% into my tattoo work. I've been really like feeling really inspired by that and really feeling almost like on fire with ideas. So, so I kind of put it all into that. And then when I started doing those sketches, I kind of thought, oh, this is like it's like just another outlet. I get to explore and do these things that I really want to do this. And yeah, just kind of unlocked something, and I got carried away with it, and I still want to do more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was doing like up for grabs tattoos just for fun. This is before I picked up the writing project again, and I was having a blast. I was pumping off one fully rendered drawing a week, but I was doing it on my iPad. I was loving it.
It's kind of like you get to free your mind and just kind of create. And you don't even, and it might not even go anywhere, but it's like, who cares? It's fun.
Well, the 1 week it was a ladybug riding a snail.
Oh yeah,
and
nice.
Another week it's like a steampunk lion. It's just all kinds of just crazy stuff, random.
It kind of brings me back to, like, I remember the early days when I started tattooing, and you're probably the same as me. We were brought up that a tattoo artist should be able to tattoo in all styles, right? Like I could do Celtic or tribal or a portrait or whatever, Japanese stuff or anybody. Tasmanian devil. I did so many damn Tasmanian devils back then that I remember not finding a reference. It doesn't matter. I can just draw it from memory, right?
Yeah.
I did so many Tasmanian devils, but one of the funnest things about that time period, and I did a lot of flash back then. I had tons of flash, like from even like Spider Webb and J.D. Crowe and Paul Booth and whoever, right? Jack Rudy flash, all this stuff we had, or it gets around or whatever. And none of it was bootleg, by the way, none. But there's this flash that gets around. And so as a young tattooer, I'm trying all these different styles, and some things resonate more than others, right? And they were all fun, but some things, like, I remember doing something from like a spider web sheet or whatever, and I really dig that style. I really love that, and so I started drawing these like kind of spider web style skulls for a little while and stuff like that, and I think all those little things maybe lead you on these directions to try something new or different. And so, like what you're saying about drawing what was the second thing you drew?
For grabs?
The second, you said you did the ladybug riding a snail. What was the second one?
And then a steampunk
steampunk
lion.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, I remember trying all these different styles, and sometimes you try something you never even knew existed or never heard of, and then you're like, but that was so fun, and now that's what I want to do. Like, you know, maybe now you're going to do a whole bunch of steampunk stuff, right? Like, why not?
Well, I do find that if someone comes in and asks for something, that it's highly likely that you're going to do a few more of those tattoos. It's like
Yeah,
tigers get in the air. Everybody wants a tiger, and then
yeah,
next thing you know, do you find that you'll end up hitting
I
the same style a few times?
I do.
Yeah,
It's funny because I just had that happen yesterday at shop here the other day. I had a guy had booked me to do a skull, and I did a couple bats. I did a little bat on my niece a couple weeks ago, and then I did another guy got a bat, and then this guy came by to pay a deposit or something, and he's like, "I know we got this plan, but he's like, I saw these bats you did," and he's like, "I kind of want to get a bat now," and hey, then we'll do a bat, right?
yeah,
And so now we're going to do a bat, right? So it's kind of like one of those things. I guess people see that and like, yeah, I guess they just think it's cool, so they want it. And definitely, I think if you put the tiger in the air or the bat or the whatever dragon, for me, I'm really into dragons lately. I want people to
yeah,
get dragons. So, but like, yeah, it definitely gets in the air. And sometimes
yeah,
you don't know, right? Like I found so many people want frogs this last year.
yeah.
Like a whole bunch of people phoning wanting frogs and stuff. And what, I don't know. Somebody got a frog at some point.
Yeah, it's like there's a vacuum. You do it once, it's in your ethos or in your thoughts, and
Yeah,
next thing you know, it's like you're a vacuum for every person that wants a frog tattoo within 50 to 100 kilometers.
yeah. I did one frog, but I mean, my coworkers, they've done a bunch of frogs, and it's just like Year of the Frog. And
Yeah,
yeah, and I think last year, what was it? I think a lot of people wanted phoenixes or something. Like there was like some years you just get a whole whack of phoenixes, and one year you get a whole whack of dragons. One year you get the frogs. One year everybody wants a tiger, you know. And yeah, it's just funny that way. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I
So,
always find it interesting.
any big projects on the go now, Kurt? Anything that you're
Like
are you
tattoo wise,
anything wise outside of work, inside of work?
mm, I actually have been really focused on just my tattoo work. I haven't been doing a lot of like kind of art project. Like I said, I haven't been really painting much, sketching other than just what we talked about, right?
Yeah.
So no, I don't really have a lot of outside the tattoo shop projects on the go, but I've been really putting my mind into my tattoo work and really trying to push that
Hmm.
lately. And I wouldn't say there's a specific one. I've got a lot of kind of bigger pieces on the go. I don't know. They're all really fun. You know, it's like people ask me sometimes, what's your favorite tattoo or what's your best tattoo? And I'm just like, well, this one, right?
Yeah.
The one I'm working on. That's the one I'm the most into.
Yeah. I always say the next one. What's your favorite
The next
tattoo? The
one.
next one.
I
Yeah.
like that one too. But that
Yeah.
John Cook, who the guy you mentioned, he was helping me back in the day. He used to always tell me, "You're only as good as your last tattoo."
Yeah.
And he said, remember that. And I've always, you know, that really stuck with me. And every day for years, and to even now, I'll go. Sometimes I'm looking in the mirror at the end of the day, and I got to ask myself, like, was I happy with my tattoo? Was I at least satisfied with it? Right? You know, like I mean, you know, did I
Mhm.
give it everything I got? And I have to ask myself that every day. And it
Yeah.
has to be yes. And if it's not yes, then I gotta work harder, right?
That's right. I used to
Yeah,
always tell the people in my shop, if tattooing doesn't bring you to the edge of your seat, you might as well get out of it, because
yeah,
it takes all of us, like all of our presence and our all of our energy to really try to do our best.
yeah, absolutely. What's to say? If they don't find you handsome, they might as well find you handy.
That's right. Good thing I'm both.
What's that? Red green?
Yeah, red green. So when I was doing that interview initially, if I remember right, you were talking about Harley Charlie. Did
Yeah,
you did you ever meet that guy?
Oh yeah, I worked with him in Niagara Falls, in at Way Cool in Niagara Falls for a summer one year, and well, I actually met him here in Winnipeg before that
Okay.
at a party. There was a guy named Bobby Steele who passed away actually this past year. And Bobby, he was kind of like, he wasn't a tattoo artist. He was just kind of a character that in Winnipeg, everybody knew Bobby Steele. You know, it was one of those guys everybody knows, right? And he had amazing tattoo work. He had Ed Hardy had done his half sleeves and his chest, and then he had the Dutchman did a bunch of work on him. And so he was kind of like the Dutchman did these two fighting roosters on his legs, you know, and just a cool guy, and he knew Charlie. And so when I first moved to Winnipeg, and I had met Bobby, and ended up at his 50th birthday party, and that's where I met Charlie. He had come to town for it, I guess. So, and then Charlie invited me to come work with him for the summer in Niagara Falls, and that's where I met Ace as well, Crazy Ace. Okay. Ace owned Way Cool, right?
That's right.
So I guess the shop in Niagara Falls was kind of like a franchise that Charlie ran.
Yeah.
He's also went and worked there too. And so that's how I met Charlie. And then we became friends. And like he came to Winnipeg every now and then. I remember he tattooed me in the back porch of my old house. And I tattooed him there too. I tattooed his forearm, and I did a few tattoos on a big cover up, I remember. And,
that's right. You guys swapped tattoos.
We did, yeah. And he was a cool guy, and yeah. And I'm still friends with Corey, who's his son.
That's right.
Ferguson, yeah. He was just here a few weeks ago doing a guest spot, actually.
Yeah. Well, I interviewed Corey Ferguson just recently, and I was sort of leaving a lot of people in Ontario to last because it's my province. I can just slip out whenever. But yeah, I remember when he brought up, because I interviewed Corey about his dad, Charlie, and I distinctly remembered in our interview you had talked about Charlie. So yeah, that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, he was a cool guy, and I just recently there's a girl named Pim Avery. Do you know who that is?
No.
She's living down in I think she's in I don't know. I want to say Tucson or somewhere. I see her on Facebook all the time. But anyway, she just recently wrote a book. And in her book, I haven't read it yet. I kind of glanced through it, but in her book, she has a whole chapter about like Canada and working with Charlie and Ace. And I'm really looking forward to reading that, because the first time I think I met her, or maybe the second time, I don't know. I remember meeting her because she came to take over my chair in Niagara Falls when I was there as a guest artist, right? So
yeah,
and so I'm looking forward to reading her book about it, and but I know it did talk about Charlie in there too, and Ace. So
yeah,
and they're both gone now, you know, and I think that shop's gone. It's kind of a weird thought.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I became pretty good friends with Ace before he passed, because he moved close to me.
Yeah.
So I made quite a few trips and hung out with him, and it was pretty cool. Like, he softened a lot in his old age.
Yeah.
I think he wanted to make up for his errorful ways at times.
Maybe he was always a softie at heart.
He probably was. Yeah. Yeah. I posted a picture of me snuggling with him on Instagram. I don't know if you caught that photo. And someone commented, I think it was Corey Ferguson commented, how did that ever happen? Like, but yeah, he was probably a softie at heart.
I remember reaching out to Ace shortly before he passed away, because we had been invited to be a part of the Saskatoon Tattoo Convention, and I remember Ace hadn't been to a lot of conventions for a while, and he was living out in Woodstock, I think, right? And so I'd been invited to Saskatoon, and they said, "Oh, if you want, you can invite some people, right?" So I was like, "I'm going to invite Ace, right?" And and he was totally into it. He was like, yeah, we'll have a booth beside each other. And he was working on a slideshow. He wanted to have like a history of tattooing slideshow. He said, I remember him telling me, I'm up to like 400 slides now. And he made so many slides. And the idea was to have his booth beside ours, and he was going to have all this tattoo history stuff. I don't know. It just would have been really fun. And he hadn't been on the convention scene for a while, so it was going to be his return. But then unfortunately he passed away, I think, about 2 months before, or a month or so before. So that never came to be, but it was nice talking to him for a while before that.
Yeah. I actually inherited all of his tattoo history, the written stuff that he had put down.
Oh, wow.
So he had been working on the world history, and he had hard drives full of information. And when he passed, the hard drives came to me, and I copied them, and I can use any Canadian stuff. Wow. Of course, I'll credit where it came from.
Yeah. Well, maybe you should do the presentation that he was going to do.
I probably have the slideshow. I'm pretty sure I did. And he's got all kinds of stuff on early, Southern tattooing, like the Samoans and Polynesians and all that. Yeah.
Well, he had a tattoo museum for a while there in Toronto, right? Like he had like a supply company, and he had a museum there on Queen Street on the second floor. Tattoo Cam, that's right. Yeah. 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 And I think I still have some of the tubes from there. They were really good, actually. I still use metal tubes.
Do you? Good for you.
Well, it's less wasteful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the last question I have is, there's a bit of a statement to go in front of it, but as I've traveled across the country and interviewed tattooists from all over, your name has come up repeatedly, like as an inspiration to others, which is pretty awesome. And so I was thrilled that, we're doing this little video interview today, because a lot of people look up to you and respect the work that you're doing and see you as like a benchmark in tattooing. So do you have something you want to leave behind as your legacy? What would you like to, at the end of Kurt Wiscombe history, what would you like to leave behind?
I don't know. I mean, that's a weird thought, because I'm still working on it.
I know, right? I know.
But I guess, I don't know. I have to think about that one for a second. I guess I don't know about a specific, leaving a specific mark as like, I guess I've always thought that as a tattoo artist, if we could just help in my own way, and I guess in our shared way, because I think all of us tattoo artists really think tattoos are beautiful, right? So I kind of think in my own way, like if I could help beautify the place a little bit more with my work, then maybe I've made the world slightly more interesting, or at least had a part in it. I mean, I say a part in it because without the customers that wear the tattoos, it's both of us together that do it, right? Not just me and not just them. So maybe if I had a part in helping beautify the world or make it more interesting, then that's good.
Yeah. And I guess it's sort of a question too, like what do you feel is important to that, what advice would you give other tattooists? That's part of, what we leave behind is how we influence other people.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we could talk for hours about advice. You learn a lot of lessons over the years, right? Like most of them the hard way. But I think probably what I always say, if you follow your heart and if it's in your blood, you'll find your way, and I don't think that, I don't know how tattooing is now, if it's different getting into it now. I feel like there's a lot of people, so maybe it's harder or something, but like it was always hard. And the thing is, like, there is no easy road. Whatever path you choose, if you're starting out tattooing, it's going to be a bumpy path. There
Yeah.
is no paved path for tattooing, right? There was people before us that came in and tried to pave the way, and it was still bumpy, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we tried to pave the way in some way, but no, it's still bumpy. And and maybe people getting into it. Well, I wouldn't say that I'd say get ready for a bumpy road, but they'll find out anyway. Even if they're like, yeah, it'll be easy. It's like, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure it will, right? I don't think so, right? We all end up paying our dues, and some of us pay extra dues, and the ones that don't pay their dues in the beginning, down the road they'll pay it in some way.
Yeah.
It'll be worth it. You stick through it. I guess my advice would be stick to the path. It's meant to be bumpy.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, maybe it's not meant to be bumpy. It is. You got to expect it to be bumpy. So,
yeah,
what we do is kind of an out there thing. As popular as tattooing is these days, and as much as it's our world and it's all we know in a lot of cases, it really is an out there thing. And I meet people all the time that don't know anything about tattoos, and they're just not into tattoos at all, and they don't know the first thing about it. And there's a lot of people out there like that. So it really is our little world, actually.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's ever going to be at a point where you don't have to explain tattoos to somebody. It's not going to be at a point where you don't have to justify, I became a tattoo artist. I have to justify that or whatever, It's an alternative thing, what we do.
It was funny. It had just crossed my mind the other day how strange, if you pull back and you look at the scenario, people are coming in and you're jamming needles in their bodies. And they're paying you, that you're putting through pain, and but at the end there's this beautiful image on the skin, and it is strange. It's funny you say that, because I just had it flashed through my mind a couple of days ago. I'm like, God, is this ever a strange thing that I do for a living, and I could make a living just putting needles into people?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the putting the needles in it is just a means to an end, right? Like I guess that's one of the things that really blows me away about tattooing, and it's that, like, people that get large tattoo work and even small work, but like they believe in it so much, and they want to wear this mark so much that they're willing to endure that process, whatever it takes, and I mean, there's some places are worse than others, right? Like, you get your elbow done, it's a lot worse than getting it here, right? Like, but people still get their elbow done, right? They want it done, so they get it done, and they're willing to go through all of this to express themselves in this way. And I find that really amazing. I found when I was younger in tattooing, I was just always so focused on doing the tattoo. I never really thought about that angle so much. I just was like, wow, whatever, I just do the tattoos and try to do as best I can, try to make a cool tattoo. And now over the years, I've seen some people, especially not just, but especially the ones that get like full body tattoos or a big back piece or sleeves or whatever. It is almost like a transformation for some people, and as an artist, I've felt the transformation occur, and I'm humbled by that. I'm completely honored by that. It's like I get to be maybe a small part of this transformation of this person who's now going from a regular person, to now this like walking work of art. And not just that, but like it's like we were saying earlier, the tattoo isn't wearing them. They're not even just wearing the tattoo, they just are that.
Yeah.
Right. And I can't help but think that these tattoos have changed their lives in some ways, especially their whole body. I mean, I have most of my body tattooed, and I definitely know, I mean, I can't even remember what it was like to not be heavily tattooed, it was so long ago, but my tattoos are definitely a part of me and who I am. I don't look at it like, oh, that's what I wear this tattoo. It's like, no, that's my arm.
Yeah.
Just tattooed.
I've always felt there's is something incredibly special about what we do, and there's a touch of alchemy in our work. We are transforming people, and
Yeah.
I've been transformed just by watching the transformation in people. You know, whether it just be they stand taller, or they feel better about themselves, or they heal, or they grow, or they just change in some way.
Yeah.
It's been really fascinating. I've been tattooing 31 years, and I'm still deeply fascinated to see who the client is the first time they show up, and then at the end of this, like a dozen sessions or 4 sessions, just how they've changed. Because the people
Yeah.
do.
Exactly. I've seen people come in, they maybe they were shy, a little meek or whatever, and they might have been just nervous to come to the tattoo shop in their, mind you, but like, I've seen some come in like that, and then exactly like years later, they're the, like chest out, and they're bold and strong, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I've seen even some regular customers. You kind of get to know some people too, right? And I've had some regular customers who've made friends with each other, and so now they're buddies, and it becomes almost like a community, and it's really it's a nice thought to think back to, like, having been a part of that, or on a different side of it, right? Because I'm the guy putting the tattoos on, and they're the ones with the tattoos, but it's like you're still, I don't know, it's different, but you're still part of the group, kind of,
That's great.
kind of cool. So maybe that's something that I don't know, it's something to ponder, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a legacy. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's an exclamation point. I think it's a ...
Yeah.
To be continued, and I think, I don't know.
I know in
none of us get out of this alive, so we might as well make it more interesting while we're here.
Well, that's just right. Nobody's getting out of here alive. Yeah. I remember when I was initially interviewing people, the people back that were started in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 90s, a lot of them talked about the mystique of tattooing, and I would sort of ask them, I'd kind of frame the whole thing like, do you miss how tattooing used to have this bigger mystique? But I think nowadays maybe it's there's still just as much magic in what we do. We just have to see it as tattooing is today, because everything changes. There's nothing that doesn't change in this world. So, but yeah. I still think this is part of the magic that we can still find in tattooing. I don't think the mystique of tattooing in the 80s and 70s of walking into a scary tattoo shop made up all the ground of what the mystique is in tattooing. But it's these things that we're talking about that really add to the mystique of what we do and how special and important tattooing is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well put.
So
yeah, and I think also back then the tattoo community was a lot smaller.
Very small.
So it was more obvious that people were like, thought it was this mysterious thing. It was like almost like a weird underground thing. Like, look, again, we talked earlier about that movie Tattoo with Bruce Dern, right? Like, you watch that movie, like, it's such a mysterious thing. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it's,
I have.
Yeah, it's like the way the characters were in the movie, it was treated as this weird thing from like another world, and he discovered it in Japan, and blah blah blah, and and nowadays our community has grown so large. Maybe and we're so in it that maybe it's hard for people in it to realize that there's still so many people out there that it is a complete mystery to, right?
Yeah,
I remember running into somebody at a convention somewhere, and like somebody in the hotel, and they were like, "Oh, what are you here for?" And I'm like, "Oh, for a tattoo convention." I remember the person going, "Huh, really? I guess they have conventions for everything these days, right?" And that's when it dawned on me, wow, this guy it never even occurred to this guy that there's enough tattooed people that they'd want to have a convention, right? I mean, well, there's like nowadays there's hundreds of conventions, right?
Yeah.
But that's okay. That's good. I thought that was kind of cool, actually, if the guy thought that, because it was that mystique again, and he was intrigued by it, and
Sure, yeah.
didn't know anything about it, and I thought that's cool,
Yeah, that was awesome. I really appreciate you coming back on and having this chat.
Anytime, man.
Yeah, pretty cool to hear some of your thoughts and what drives you in your work, and just picking at the mind of Kurt Wiscombe.
Likewise, it's been fun chatting with you too.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'll interview you next.
Okay, you do that.
Let me know when you want to. Yeah, no, I'm serious. We could do that if you want.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
It'd be like those what are those radio shows where they let somebody take control of the programming for a day,
Yeah.
I'll control your channel for a day and interview you.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay, we'll make a plan. I'm gonna hold you to it.
Okay.